So I want to talk about the differences between a task-focused approach and an emotion-focused approach in dog behavior and training. So a task-focused approach is really focusing on what you're trying to get your dog to do, a physical action that they can do on a command or a cue that you've taught them. So a recall, that is a task-focused approach, teaching your dog to sit, to lie down, to watch, stay, all of those kinds of things. Those are tasks that you will teach your dog that you will be able to use in their day and as a part of other training that you're doing with them. It's the kind of stuff that you might learn at a training class as a puppy, or when your dog goes maybe to a class as an older dog. Most of the stuff that you would learn at most classes will be task focused. An emotion focused approach is really looking more at the way the dog feels and trying to change that. So if your dog is very hyperactive or very scared or very aggressive, then you'll be looking at an emotion focused approach to try and solve those problems. The reason for this is because a dog goes through kind of a selection of different mind states when they start to approach different situations. So let's imagine a dog that is triggered by another dog. They're scared of other dogs. As you approach a situation where there might be a dog, before your dog's noticed it, he'll be in his comfort zone. He'll be quite happy and relaxed, enjoying his walk. And then he'll start to notice the dog in the future, in the distance. And he'll start to become a little bit more on edge. He'll start to become a little bit more anxious. And he'll at that point then go into his learning zone. This is away from the comfort zone. He's out of his comfort zone. He's alert and he's aware. But his brain is still switched on. So he's still able to make good decisions. He's still listening to you. He's still aware of everything else that's happening in his environment. This dog in the distance is just a small part of it. And then as you get closer and closer to the dog, or whatever it is that's triggering your dog's emotion, that emotion will get stronger and stronger and stronger until there'll come a tipping point where that emotion completely takes over and it overwhelms them. And then you'll go into what I call the out of control zone. And emotionally, what happens there is his brain goes into emergency control. So the thinking brain, the learning brain has been switched off, and the reactive brain, the emergency brain, has been switched on. So he's in fight and flight mode now, and all his actions, everything he's doing is there to keep him safe. So rather than making a good, sensible decision to listen to you and do what you're asking him, he's become overwhelmed, and the emergency system is now telling him that he might need to fight. He's preparing for that he might need to run fast. So his body is now preparing for that. And the responses you'll see will all be there to keep him safe. That's the only purpose of them. He'll become very focused on the thing that has triggered that emotion. And he is completely unaware of you and your environment and anything else that's happened. So when dogs are in this mode, this is when they accidentally run in front of cars because they're trying to escape a situation. That thinking part of the brain, the sensible part, is not switched on. They're just reacting to the situation and they're trying to get away to safety. If they're not running away, then they might be standing their ground and fighting or trying to make themselves look scary, maybe trying to scare something away. So you'll recognize this kind of behavior, and it can start from anywhere. It can be a hyperactive behavior. At some point, your dog will get too excited and their body can't cope anymore, and this emergency situation will kick in. The same can happen for anxiety, for guarding behaviors, aggressive behaviors, frustrated behaviors. All of these behaviors have these levels, and at some point, if it gets too much, it will trigger into this out of control kind of territory. But of course, while they're in this mode, in this out of control state, where they're not paying attention to anything in their environment, it doesn't really matter what they know. So you can be standing in front of them, you can be asking them to sit, look at you, you can be waving stakes in front of them. They don't notice you there, they don't notice anything else. All they're thinking about is that trigger in the distance and getting themselves safe. So a task-focused approach will work really, really well up until that point. And lots of training plans and lots of people ask me about this particular state. What do we do when the dog loses control? What do we do when they're barking and lunging? What do we do when they're trying to snap at people? What do we do when they're in this state of mind? Because that's the behavior they want to change. And training plans that focus on this will not be successful because there isn't anything you can do for your dog while they're in this state of mind. We have to manage that emotion so they stay in their learning zone. And while they're in their learning zone, they are paying attention to you. They can follow instructions. They can listen to cues. They will take treats. They will pay attention to toys. All of that kind of stuff clicks back in again once we get them back away from that very emotional, out of control zone. So an emotion focused approach is usually the best approach when you're working with any kind of behavior problem, any kind of mental health problem, anxiety, all of those kind of things, because it keeps the dog in that learning zone. And then all of your task focused training that you've done all becomes really useful then, because whilst they're in that zone, they can do things for you and you can reward them and they can feel good about it, and they start to get rewarded from you rather than for going through that emotional response and keeping themselves safe, because also that's self-rewarding. Once that part of the brain, the emergency response part of the brain, has triggered, if it manages to succeed and it keeps you safe and it keeps you unscathed, then it will give itself a really good pat on the back, and that will become a default behavior. So next time you're in a similar situation, doesn't have to be the same, but it does have to feel similar, then it will trigger that response again. So that becomes a strong response. It's rewarding because it succeeded at its goal. So it becomes more and more frequent. But keeping them in that learning zone using an emotion focused response means that they're getting all of their rewards from you, from paying attention to you, and that's how you manage both of those responses together. Also, the tricky part about a task-focused approach, which I've not mentioned yet, is that it's possible to not succeed at a task-focused thing. If you've asked your dog to sit and they sit, that's great, they have succeeded. But if they don't, then technically they failed. And then that can become rather a negative way to move forward. So an emotion-focused response, it's not possible to get wrong. You can just try and manage a response. You try and manage an area. You try to manage how your dog is feeling. And all you can do really is just make progress with that. So that's a different kind of mindset as well. Because when you're trying to work on behavior problems, it doesn't work in a straight line. You don't start at point A and move and put X amount of effort in and get X amount of benefit from it. There's so many things that can affect how your training works. So it's not about getting it right or wrong. It's about seeing improvements all the time and looking for those improvements rather than thinking we messed that all up and that all went wrong. But with a task focused approach, it is a bit more black and white. You either did it or you didn't do it. So that's the difference between task and emotion focused. As a trainer, I focus a lot on emotion and mental health and managing anxiety and mental states and that kind of thing. And I do very little in terms of task focused training. And that's just kind of the way that I work. And that's why I work a lot with behavior problems, mental health problems, rather than as a natural trainer doing classes and all that kind of stuff. But once you know how to manage that emotion, you can apply that into all different ways. So it can work really well if you're just trying to manage behavior problems and things like that. Anyway, hopefully that's helped give a little bit of an insight into those different kinds of approaches and which one might be right for your dog and what you're trying to achieve with them. Take care for now. Bye-bye.